Here's the unit. I pulled the condenser fan off the top. I don't want to unhook it. I don't need to correct this. See if we can zoom in here. Alright, well, the unit won't run. I fired it up by pushing in the contactor and holding it in with the screwdriver, and I heard hissing, so I know there's a leak in the system. And what happened is the compressor wires are resting on the low pressure, the suction line that goes into the receiver here. And let me show you what's going on. Because they were resting there, and this yellow line is one of the hot lines, well, there's a pinhole that actually just wore through, and then if you flip this line over, it actually melted the insulation, and it must have arced across, and that's what caused it to make this hole. That's just the way it was resting. There's a cable tie down there. This is the first time I've serviced my own unit. I did just get my universal certification, so I'm learning this whole thing. But yeah, so what I'm going to do is braze that hole shut, then put a vacuum pump on, evacuate the system, make sure that holds, there's no other leaks, and then I'm going to charge it up, and we'll see if we can get it running again. I'm going to definitely tie these wires off so they're not hanging down on touching any of the copper, low pressure or high pressure. So now we know the problem. The pinhole is brazed, it's covered with solder, and now we are running the Yellow Jacket Super Vac 6 CFMs on her. We're down to minus 30 PSIG, so we are going to isolate the system, turn it off, let it sit for 10 minutes, see if it holds a vacuum, then we'll know there's no leaks. Okay, it's been 10 minutes. System was isolated. I turned off both the low pressure and high pressure valves, and I released the vacuum by just backing off the hose. I already did that, but as you can see by the low pressure gauge, we're still holding at minus 30 on the compound gauge. We're still holding a good vacuum, so our brazing held. There it is, cooled off, cleaned up. Just filled that hole with solder. Didn't fill it, we just brazed over the top. And so now what we need to do is start charging the system. Then I need to, insulate that worn spot on the yellow compressor wire. Also tie those up so they're not touching any copper, even with the fan running. And once the system gets at least halfway charged, we'll run it to charge it up to where we need it, and should be back in business. Okay, we're about ready to charge the system. I have the wire zip tied to another wire, but what happened was they had it zip tied to the suction line, and I think in the winter when this thing reverses and works as a heat pump, it got hot and melted through. I'm guessing, I don't know. There's the old zip tie, and it's just broken. But then I go over to my second unit for the lower part of the house, and since it still works fine, but since I had this issue, I was looking in there. I haven't touched anything yet. And here we go. The zip tie that holds the compressor wires to the suction line has melted through also. Right there. You can see it. And we have just the start of some chafing on this blue line. Not really enough to arc through, but the insulation is warm. So I'm going to re-zip tie this with a new zip tie and hold it off. And since I'm doing my own HVAC service now on my own house, I am going to keep an eye on that at least twice a year while I clean the coils and flush the condensate drains and all that. I'll give that a visual inspection. I can do that with the fan in place. I don't even really need to remove it. But yeah, so we know how it happened, why it happened, what happened, and how to correct it. So it's just an ongoing maintenance issue. We got to keep an eye on it. Okay.